And I'm going to break off from this story now because this is very important breaking news. The Sun tomorrow on its front page will have.
This was no ordinary medical bulletin, but the leak of a scandal that posed a direct threat to the life of a royal family member. Duchess Sophie abruptly canceled all her schedules after discovering a vicious threat letter stealthily planted in the trunk of her armored car right at Sandringham. The safety of the royal family had been breached. The perpetrator thought they had successfully covered up their crime by wiping the entire security camera system clean. But footage from a dashcam in a car coincidentally parked nearby exposed a seismically shocking truth. The culprit who infiltrated the scene was Camilla's most trusted henchman. That very night, Prince William struck back ruthlessly. Showing no mercy, he personally kicked Camilla out of the palace, stripped her of all privileges, and buried her humiliation under a press release about treatment for pneumonia. The blackmail plot to seize power had been crushed, but is this war truly over? Would someone with such massive ambition, exiled in disgrace, resign herself to silence in the shadows? And how many more traps will the future king have to expose to protect his family from stabs in the back? Darkness fell over the Sandringham estate like a thick black velvet curtain. The wind howled through the ancient spires, carrying the bone-chilling cold of a moonless night. The internal parking lot, tucked away to the east, was completely engulfed in silence. There, the black armored Range Rover belonging to Prince Edward and Duchess Sophie's family sat motionless. From behind a row of ancient oak trees, a dark figure separated itself from the night. The intruder moved along the edge of the stone wall. He was dressed in black from head to toe, his face hidden beneath a woolen ski mask. His footsteps were weightless, the rubber soles of his shoes seemingly creating zero friction against the gravel. He did not look like an amateur petty thief. Every movement was calculated with deadly precision. He glided flawlessly through 3 security camera blind spots. He stopped behind Sophie's Range Rover. His leather-gloved hand ran along the edge of the armored trunk. From his pocket, he pulled out a thin, flat metal bar, specially crafted to disable even the most sophisticated electronic locking systems. With just 2 quick pops, the trunk lid cracked open. He didn't rummage around. He didn't take anything. His crime was far more sinister than ordinary greed. He reached deep into the felt lining of the trunk and set down a fragile object that carried the weight of a death sentence, an anonymous white envelope. Inside that envelope was a piece of paper printed with cheap black ink containing foul words. The faceless enemy had written a barbaric ultimatum. The letter was aimed directly at Sophie, threatening to stage a bloody attack on her and her children in the middle of a crowd if she dared to step out the door for tomorrow's charity event. Their only demand: she must voluntarily withdraw from all schedules and disappear completely from the public eye. The intruder pushed his hand down. The trunk slammed shut. He stepped back, vanishing into the thick fog, as if he never existed. A ticking time bomb had been successfully planted right at the heart of the family. The next morning, the feeble sunlight wasn't enough to chase away the freezing cold of Sandringham. Sophie stepped out into the courtyard, preparing to depart for her morning schedule. The royal guards stood watch from a distance. Everything looked peaceful. She opened the trunk herself to put away her personal handbag. The hydraulic door slowly lifted. Sophie's eyes froze. The white envelope lay haphazardly on the dark felt lining, standing out like a scar. There was no reason for an anonymous letter to be inside a tightly locked and heavily guarded vehicle. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Her fingers ran along the edge of the paper, tearing the seal open. Her eyes quickly scanned the lines of text. The blood in her veins seemed to turn to ice. Her face went pale, completely drained of color. Every word, every sentence was as sharp as a blade, stabbing straight into her mind. They knew her schedule. They knew where her children were. They had touched her car. Panic suffocated Sophie's chest. She took a step back, her breathing jagged. Anyone among the people standing around here, the servants mowing the lawn, the cleaning staff, could be the mastermind. An invisible hand had reached right into her very bed. They were not just stripping away her safety. They were demanding her life. The oak door of her private quarters slammed shut. The safety deadbolt was pushed into place. Sophie threw her handbag heavily onto the sofa. She immediately picked up the phone, calling her private secretary to deliver a razor-sharp decision, calling in sick. All charity event schedules were immediately canceled indefinitely. But Sophie did not choose to run away like a weak prey. Her initial terror was quickly incinerated, giving way to the flames of absolute fury. She could not let herself and her children live under the shadow of a coward, throwing stones and hiding their hands. She had to rip that person to shreds. Thomas, the chief commander of Sophie's private security detail, stepped into the room the moment he received the emergency summons. The car was broken into last night. This letter was inside it. Sophie pushed the paper across the desk. Her voice was as sharp as broken glass. Tear that parking lot apart. I want to know who managed to bypass the family security perimeter. Thomas didn't hesitate. The internal special ops team immediately fanned out, sweeping every square millimeter of the eastern sector. But just an hour later, Thomas returned, his face so tense that his features looked as though they were carved from solid rock. The security cameras, Thomas reported, his voice low and gravelly. All data in the eastern parking lot area from midnight to 5 this morning has been wiped clean. It's not a technical glitch. It was a manual delete command from the central server. Sophie gripped the armrests of her chair tightly. The mastermind was not an outside force. It was someone holding immense power right inside this palace. Someone who could manipulate the massive security system, turning the guards into blind men. At that exact moment, in a lavish suite in the palace's west wing, Camilla was leisurely taking a sip of Earl Grey tea. She stood by the window, looking down at the expansive courtyard. The corners of her lips curled up into a satisfied smile. The news of Sophie calling in sick and canceling her schedule had spread. A perfect move. She knew very well that the family's working royals were spread thin. Sophie's absence would create a massive power vacuum, and she would legitimately step into that role, solidifying her presence right beside King Charles. Her filthy plan was running so smoothly that not even a speck of dust could stick to it. But Camilla was too arrogant. Her complacency caused her to overlook a fatal flaw. Thomas did not accept defeat. He returned to the scene, retracing every single step in the parking lot himself, observing with the eyes of a predator. The sharp intuition of a battle-hardened soldier told him that there were always things beyond control. Thomas's gaze stopped dead. Nestled beneath the canopy of a giant ancient tree, not far from the Range Rover's position, was a lightweight motorcycle. A rugged-looking Yamaha PG1 built for off-road terrain. Thomas recognized it. It belonged to a landscaping technician working the night shift. This vehicle was not on the list of controlled assets monitored by the building's security camera network. More importantly, hidden with extreme cunning just beneath the round headlight cluster of the Yamaha PG1 was a tiny dashcam lens. Its status light was still blinking, indicating loop recording. Thomas immediately tracked down the employee. With just a razor-sharp glare and a flash of his royal badge, he seized the tiny memory card from the hands of the flustered gardener. Back in Sophie's dark room, Thomas plugged the memory card into a laptop. Both held their breath. The footage appeared. The black and white frame of the infrared mode covered the entire expanse of the parking lot. At 2:14 a.m., a dark figure appeared in the corner of the shot. The video interface was slightly blurry due to the fog and low light. The dark figure approached the Range Rover, executed the lockpicking, and shoved the letter inside. "Stop right there," Sophie ordered. He was turning his head right before making his getaway. The angle of his face was caught in the frame, but the shadows and the mask obscured most of the details. "Let me," Thomas said. He opened a professional photo editing software. Thomas's fingers flew across the keyboard. He dragged the tool sliders, boosting the exposure significantly, and pushed the contrast to the maximum. The dark areas were forced to spit out their hidden details. He continued adjusting the shadow parameters, reducing the grain exactly like a specialist restoring torn, ancient photographs. Gradually, the features obscured by darkness began to materialize. The jawline structure, the bridge of the nose, the faint small scar beneath the outer corner of the left eye. The computer rendered an incredibly sharp, still frame. Sophie's eyes widened. Her rage exploded, shattering all restraint. The man on the screen was no nameless mercenary. It was the senior bodyguard, the one who constantly escorted Camilla like a shadow. He was her right-hand man, the one who paved the way for all her conspiracies. The rotten truth was laid bare. The person plotting to take her family's lives was none other than the woman sitting majestically in the west wing of the palace. Back up everything. Sophie's voice was as cold as a sword just drawn from its sheath. I am taking this to William. Her game is over. The memory card and the stack of color-printed photos were thrown straight onto Prince William's desk. He sat in his study, his eyes glued to the bodyguard's face on the paper. Fury surged through his veins like molten lava. William had been patient. He had tried to maintain a facade of false peace for the stability of the monarchy. But when the enemy dared to bare their fangs at the lives of his loved ones, all limits were shattered. Camilla daring to send a henchman to break in, pick a lock, and deliver a death threat wasn't just an act of aggression. It was an act of treason. William didn't call the police. He didn't convene any crisis management meetings. That bureaucratic rot was merely a tool for enemies to stall for time. This time, he would use raw absolute power to crush his opponent. 11 p.m. The underground basement beneath the stone foundations of the palace was cold and silent as a grave. Camilla's bodyguard had just finished his shift and was briskly walking toward the staff quarters. Just as he stepped past a dark corner, 3 dark shadows dropped down from the ceiling and the walls. He didn't even have time to draw his weapon or open his mouth to shout before an arm clamped tightly around his throat. He was slammed down onto the rough stone floor. His arms were twisted violently behind his back, the icy bite of metal handcuffs snapping onto his wrists. A black canvas hood was pulled tightly over his head. He was dragged violently through endlessly long corridors deep underground. When the hood was yanked off, the blinding glare from a high-intensity lamp blasted straight into the bodyguard's face, making him squint in pain. Surrounding him were damp concrete walls. In front of him, sitting on a solitary wooden chair, was William. 4 towering security guards stood motionless in the shadows, their hands gripping steel batons tightly. "What the hell are you doing?" The bodyguard strained his neck, trying to use his status as the Queen's henchman to intimidate them. "Let me go, Lady Camilla will—" A stack of photos was thrown violently onto the stone floor, right under his nose. The bodyguard looked down. The second half of his sentence choked hard in his throat. The photos extracted from the Yamaha PG-1's dashcam were ruthlessly clear. Images of him prying the trunk open, images of him shoving the envelope inside, and the clearest of all his own face. William slowly leaned forward, his hands clasped together. His eyes drilled deep into the mind of the man kneeling on the ground. "You have exactly 10 seconds to open your mouth," William said, his pitch incredibly low, but carrying a crushing weight. 10 seconds to tell me who gave you that letter. If after 10 seconds I don't hear what I want, you will never see the light of day again." The bodyguard trembled violently. His shell of loyalty crumbled before absolute authority and the impending death sentence. He knew perfectly well that the future king made no idle threats. Sweating bullets, he dropped his head to the stone floor, gasping for air. And he confessed. He confessed everything, not missing a single detail. Camilla was the one pulling the strings behind the entire crime. She had frantically plotted this right after Sophie published the late Queen's private will. That will was like a devastating slap to the face, stripping away any chance for Camilla to weave her outsider children into the deep-rooted structure of the royal family. Her dream of seizing power was smashed right before her eyes. Hatred had twisted her into a venomous snake. She wanted to use the threat letter to break Sophie's spirit, forcing her to flee from her duties. Once Sophie disappeared, Camilla would easily play the savior, stepping up to shoulder the events, thereby completely manipulating power while the king was growing frail. William stood up. The confession was complete. The enemy had shown their hand. Now was the time for him to strike the most brutal blow of punishment. Camilla's luxurious bedroom in the West Wing was bathed in a warm golden light. She was sitting in front of her mother-of-pearl inlaid vanity, unfastening each sparkling diamond piece from her neck. A Levy-scented light candle was lit at the corner of the table, radiating the extravagant, expensive aroma of essential oils. Camilla admired her own face in the mirror, savoring the feeling of someone holding all the cards. She was utterly convinced that at this very moment, Sophie was cowering in fear, too terrified to step foot out her door. An all-too-easy victory. The massive wooden doors were kicked open without mercy. The hinges blew out, slamming hard against the wall with a deafening crack. Camilla jumped out of her skin, dropping the necklace to the floor. She whipped around her mouth, gaping open to scream for the guards. But none of her guards were out there. Standing on the threshold was William. Behind him was a squad of security personnel dressed in black, their expressions as coldly sharp as assassins, completely ignoring her existence. "What kind of insane stunt are you pulling in my room?" Camilla hissed, trying to maintain an air of fake authority. William strode forward. He didn't even bother looking at her for a second. With a swing of his arm, he violently slammed the USB drive and the stack of the bodyguard's signed confessions right into the middle of the vanity table. The papers fluttered wildly, sweeping across the burning Levy-scented light candle jar, knocking it over to shatter into pieces on the marble floor. Hot wax spilled everywhere, the luxurious scent swallowed by a sharp, burning smell. "Read it!" William growled the words, hissing through his clenched teeth. Camilla glanced at the papers, her face instantly drained of color. Her eyes were glued to the image of her trusted henchman, picking the lock of Sophie's car. Her lips trembled. Even the thick layers of makeup couldn't hide the sheer suffocating panic gripping her heart. "This is a setup!" Camilla stammered, backing away, until her spine hit the edge of the bed. "You dare frame me, I will call your father. He will—" "You will call no one." William cut her off, his eyes like razor-sharp blades plunging straight into his enemy's throat. "Your attack dog is currently in the basement. He confessed to everything. You have no way out anymore." William turned to the security squad and jerked his chin. "Clean it out." Immediately, the guards swarmed in. They showed no hesitation, no reverence. They ripped open the wardrobes, dragging out massive suitcases. Dozens of expensive dresses and limited edition handbag collections were yanked out and tossed brutally into the luggage. There was no organization, no respect. "Stop, you bastards! Stop right now!" Camilla screamed, lunging forward to snatch back a handbag. But two guards stepped up violently, pinning her arms. She thrashed about desperately. Her usual arrogance completely vanished, leaving only the pathetic state of a villain unmasked. "Take her away," William coldly ordered. "Cut all her access. Confiscate all communication devices." They didn't let her walk out the front door. Camilla was forcibly marched through a narrow, dark emergency exit, a path originally meant only for the cleaning servants. The ultimate humiliation crashed down upon the one who had once harbored ambitions of manipulating the entire dynasty. Down in the freezing parking garage, an unmarked closed-box truck with its engine running was already waiting. Camilla was shoved straight into the back compartment. The iron doors slammed shut, locking her powerless screams into the darkness. The next morning, when the public woke up, they were completely oblivious to the bloody purge of the previous night. Every newspaper simultaneously published a brief, definitive statement from the press office. Queen Camilla will officially withdraw from all royal duties due to a severe outbreak of pneumonia. The treatment process requires absolute isolation indefinitely. The traitor had been silently deposed, exiled, and gagged. Standing on the balcony, looking out over the fog-covered gardens, William crushed the memory card in the palm of his hand. He had smashed this conspiracy protecting Sophie and the family. The villain had paid a devastating price. But as he looked at the long black shadows cast by the ancient stone walls, a chill still ran down his spine. Power always comes with a thirst for it, and wherever there is a throne, there will always be new backstabbers born. The truck carrying Camilla had disappeared from sight, but had her venom truly been drained? Or was this merely the beginning of an even more brutal storm lurking on the horizon? Would someone with such boundless ambition and greed, like Camilla, truly be defeated? Will she wither away in humiliation and exile? Or is the darkness nurturing a far more savage counterattack to reclaim what she has lost? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.